Hello, I'm Graham Fitch and I'm bringing you this video demonstration from Steinway Hall in London, and it complements my article issue 93 of Pianist magazine, and it's all about symmetrical inversion. Now if we look at the keyboard, the piano keyboard is symmetrical from 2 points, from A flat and from D. Now by this I mean that if I were to play a chromatic scale from A flat outwards, the left hand's an exact mirror of the right hand, and vice versa, of course. So when I'm playing a third finger in this hand, I'm playing a third finger in that hand. When I'm playing a second finger, I'm playing a second finger. Black notes go with black notes, and it's an exact mirror. The same is true from D. Now you may be wondering what the point of this is. Well, I'm going to show you how you can use symmetrical inversion as a practice tool. It was really popular a while back, at the end of the last century, and I'm talking about the 19th century, into the 20th. It was very popular, then it fell out of favour, but you will find Marc-André Hamelin still does it, and there's a video on YouTube, if you search, where he demonstrates it most wonderfully, as everything he does is. Let me guide you through it a little bit, and hopefully you'll be able to make use of it when you practice, particularly for difficult passages. I'm just going to show you now, if I play a D major scale in my right hand, and I make a symmetrical inversion in my left hand, the intervals are exactly the same. Let me just talk you through the intervals. A whole tone, a semitone, or half step, whole tone, whole tone, whole tone, semitone or half step. And remember from the previous example of the chromatic scale that if I'm playing a white note with my second finger in one hand, I'm playing a white note with my second finger in the other hand, and so on. Black notes map up with black notes, white notes map up with other white notes, and fingering remains exactly the same. Actually, I forgot to tell you that Leopold Godowsky believed very much in this way of practicing, one of the great virtuosos. And Rudolf Ganz, in his kind of interesting book, Exercises Contemporary and Special, which are available online anyway, I'm going to read you a quote from him. This is Rudolf Ganz. "It is my belief that symmetrically inverting any difficult technical problem will help the other hand develop equally. So experience with symmetrical practice over the years has been of considerable benefit to me and my students. How often have I listened to the whispered conversation between my two hands? Difficult indeed. I'd like to try and conquer it too. Go ahead. Symmetrically, it's easy. Use the same fingering as mine." Now, let's look at, if you wanted, let's say you wanted to learn something in the one hand, a new skill. And I'm thinking of the advanced chromatic fingering, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, the larger groups of fingering. Let me just show you, in case you're not familiar with that. It comes in at the end of the grave section of the Pathetic Sonata Beethoven. You know, that famous spot, which gets a lot of people tangled up. The fingering I like to use, starting with a fifth finger, 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now I can't use another group of 4, 3, 2, 1, because if I did that, I'd end up with a thumb on a black note. So therefore, I have to use a group of 3 fingers. 4, and I can use 4. Here I can use only 3, 4. So you'll get the hang of it after a while. The hand will develop a sense of that fingering. But since it makes little sense learning it only in one hand, we may as well learn it in both hands. And we may as well learn it in both hands together in the form of an exercise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with just a chromatic scale from, let me start from the E flat here. Now, the mirror image of that E flat is C sharp or D flat. Do you see how I got to that? I used my point of symmetry D, let me show you here, and I just went out until I found the corresponding note, C sharp. That means that if I'm wanting to practice a chromatic scale in symmetrical inversion with that fingering, I start E flat here, D flat or C sharp here, and then everything matches from the point of view of the fingers that works? And if I wanted to practice in dotted rhythms or shifting accents, I can do that as well. Each hand tends to have its own strengths and weaknesses. Some people who are right-handed, they find their left hand's a little weaker, or the other way round. And what that tends to do is strengthen the strong hand, lends support to the weak hand. It's a really wonderful process. Let's look at the revolutionary etude. I better put my glasses on to make sure I get these notes right. The revolutionary etude of Chopin. Now, you could, of course, sit there and practice this left hand in all sorts of different rhythms and patterns. And this one. And just dotted. In all the familiar ways. Having done that, or at the same time as you're doing that, try a symmetrical inversion of it. This is fairly easy to figure out. Because I'm starting on an A flat, this hand also starts on an A flat. So that's a symmetrical inversion in the right hand of what the left hand's doing. And again, apply all the different practice methods that you would use if you were just doing this to both hands. You'll find that it makes you really think. I had to really think about what the intervals were there. And again, when I play a black note with my third finger in this hand, I'm playing a black note with my third finger in the other hand. Now, if you're not quite sure what the interval is here, you'll find that you stop for a moment, and it really makes you think. You have to know the passage very, very well for it to work. Now, we probably well, before I get on to the Chopin Prelude in G, I just want to explain that the inversion doesn't necessarily have to be exact. It can be something similar. There's a really, I think it's a fantastic book by Christopher Barnes. It's called The Russian Piano School, and it talks about Samuel Feinberg, the great Russian pianist, his symmetrical inversion for the Chopin G major prelude. Familiar with that piece? Left hand's quite tricky. So there's a symmetrical inversion he gives that isn't literal. It's this. Let me show it to you slowly. And I can keep going. I'm getting comfortable with it now. And again, if I want to apply practice procedures, how about this as a practice procedure? Instead of accenting it in fours, accenting it in threes. I'll show you. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And it takes that many repetitions to get back to the strong beat on the first note. Very good way of practicing. All sorts of other things you could do. Just to show you a couple of tiny examples of music that I'm preparing for a recital myself. The Zweilink variations on Mein junges Leben hat ein End has got a particularly tricky part in the left hand. It goes together. And I noticed as I was preparing this piece that it sometimes tripped me up. I decided I was going to make a symmetrical inversion of it. So this becomes just that. So if I want to practice double tapping the outer notes, I can, in both hands together at the same time. There was another little passage in the Mendelssohn Variation Sérieuse Variation 8, which I found sometimes let me down. This I'm going to show you slowly. That right hand is quite intricate. The patterns of blacks and whites. There to that. need to keep adjusting my position on the keyboard. So what I did when I practiced it, well, I'm still doing it actually, every now and again, it sounds a little funky. It's not exactly the most Mendelssohnian product, but for practice, it really helped me, because if I can't quite manage it in the hand, the other hand, in other words, the wrong hand, the mirrored hand, it means I don't really know it well enough in this hand. And it really, I can give it to you as an idea. To start with, you'll find it quite difficult. You'll be challenged by it, but persevere with it. I think you'll find you can add it to your practice method and use it on special occasions when you have a particularly awkward passage. Make a symmetrical inversion of it, work at it, and just see how it yields.